The forest was eerily quiet, save for the relentless patter of rain against the towering pines. A faint light flickered in the distance, bobbing up and down like a desperate signal in the storm. That light belonged to a man, his steps faltering, his breath heavy, but his spirit unbroken. Beside him, a scruffy dog with matted fur and soulful eyes trudged determinedly. The man's voice cracked as he muttered, "Just a little further, buddy." The dog let out a soft whine, his body trembling yet unyielding. What was it that bound these two on such a harrowing journey? And why did it feel like every step carried the weight of life and death? Rewind to a week earlier, in a small suburban town nestled at the edge of a sprawling forest. 8-year-old Ethan was a lively, curious child, with a penchant for wandering. His mother often teased him about his explorer's heart, though she'd always ensured his adventures were limited to their fenced-in yard. Life in their quiet neighborhood felt safe and predictable. But that predictability shattered one sunny afternoon when Ethan disappeared without a trace. Chaos erupted. Neighbors banded together, scouring every nook and cranny. Flyers plastered telephone poles, and local authorities launched a full-scale search. Yet, as hours turned into days, hope began to wane. Ethan's mother, Grace, clung to a single ray of hope, Max, their family dog, who had also gone missing. Max was Ethan's shadow, his protector. If Ethan was out there, Max would surely be by his side. Max wasn't just any dog, he was a stray that Ethan had found wandering near their home a year earlier. Frail, covered in grime, and limping on one paw, Max had seemed a pitiful sight. Yet Ethan had seen something more. "He's just lost, like me," Ethan had told Grace, referring to his struggles adjusting after his parents' divorce. With reluctant approval, Grace had let the boy nurse the dog back to health. In time, Max had blossomed into a robust, spirited companion, fiercely loyal to the boy who had saved him. 3 days into Ethan's disappearance, search teams stumbled upon a torn piece of fabric from Ethan's shirt, snagged on a bush deep in the forest. The location was miles from the neighborhood, a puzzling distance for an 8-year-old to traverse alone. But as the teams pressed on, they found something even more astonishing: paw prints, distinctly canine, weaving alongside Ethan's trail. This revelation sparked a glimmer of hope among the searchers. "If Max is with him," Grace whispered through tears, "then Ethan isn't alone." The forest, however, was a daunting labyrinth of towering trees and treacherous terrain. Known for its dense underbrush and occasional predator sightings, it wasn't a place anyone ventured lightly, especially not a child. The search parties faced dwindling resources and morale, but they pressed on, spurred by the image of a little boy and his loyal dog, battling the odds together. What they didn't know was that Max wasn't merely accompanying Ethan, he was leading him. With every step, the dog's instincts drove him forward, sensing danger, seeking shelter, and finding food. But how long could they survive in the wild? And what had led Ethan so deep into the heart of the forest? Back at home, Grace sat by the window, staring into the darkness. Her mind was a whirlwind of memories: Ethan's laughter as he raced Max around the yard, the way Max would nuzzle into Ethan's side during thunderstorms. "If anyone can protect him, it's Max," she whispered, as though willing her belief into reality. The bond between her son and the dog wasn't just companionship, it was a lifeline. Then, on the 5th day, a breakthrough came. A hiker reported hearing faint barking deep within the forest. Search teams zeroed in on the area, their flashlights slicing through the encroaching darkness. Each step carried a mix of dread and anticipation. But as they ventured deeper, the barking faded into silence. Had they imagined it? Or had the pair moved on, drawn further into the woods by some unseen force? As the search continued, a storm rolled in, transforming the forest into a churning sea of wind and rain. Searchers were forced to retreat, their equipment unable to withstand the elements. But in the midst of the chaos, Max and Ethan pressed on. Cold, wet, and hungry, the boy leaned against the dog for warmth. Max's eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the horizon. Suddenly, Max froze, his ears perking up. A distant sound, a human voice. A crack of thunder drowned it out. Max barked furiously, but Ethan, too weak to stand, could only whisper, "Go, Max, find them." The dog hesitated, his loyalty torn between the boy who needed him and the possibility of help. And then, Max made his choice. Max stood frozen, his instincts warring with his heart. Ethan's small hand clung to the dog's damp fur, his breath shallow. The boy was exhausted, his thin frame trembling from the cold. Max nudged Ethan gently, letting out a low whine. But the faint sound of voices in the distance tugged at the dog's senses like an invisible leash. The storm raged around them, the forest an unforgiving maze of shadows and rain. Max's loyalty was absolute, but he understood something primal. Help was near, and Ethan couldn't survive much longer without it. After a moment of hesitation, Max licked Ethan's face and turned to leave. The boy's eyes fluttered open briefly, filled with a mixture of trust and fear. "Come back," Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm. With a final glance at the boy, Max bounded into the darkness, his paws splashing through mud and puddles as he followed the sound of hope. Left alone, Ethan curled into himself, shivering as the storm's icy fingers clawed at him. Memories flooded his mind, intertwining with the present, the warmth of his mother's hugs, the safety of his bed, and the day he'd first met Max. He remembered the way Max had limped into their yard, wounded and scared. "Don't worry, I'll take care of you," Ethan had promised back then. Now, he hoped Max would keep his own promise in return. But the forest wasn't kind. Hunger gnawed at Ethan's stomach, and fatigue weighed down his eyelids. Every sound, the snap of a branch, the howl of the wind, felt like a lurking threat. Still, he clung to the belief that Max would return. "He always comes back," Ethan murmured, his voice breaking. Max raced through the storm, his body moving with a sense of urgency that defied his exhaustion. The voices grew louder, clearer. He barked, his deep, resonant voice cutting through the cacophony of rain and wind. The search party stopped in their tracks. "Did you hear that?" one of them shouted. They turned their flashlights toward the sound, their beams slicing through the darkness. The sight of Max emerging from the underbrush, a drenched, mud-splattered figure of desperation and determination, was both a relief and a mystery. The team recognized the dog from the missing flyers. "It's Max," someone exclaimed. But where was Ethan? Max barked again, turning and darting back toward the forest, then pausing to look back at the searchers. "He's leading us," another voice said. Without hesitation, they followed the dog, their boots squelching in the soaked earth. Meanwhile, back at the command center, Grace paced anxiously. The storm had made communication with the search teams difficult, and every passing minute felt like an eternity. Her mind oscillated between hope and despair, the maternal instinct to protect her child clashing with the helplessness of her situation. "Max found them," she whispered, as if saying it aloud would make it true. She clenched Ethan's favorite toy, a small, worn stuffed bear, in her hands, a talisman against the darkness threatening to consume her. Back in the forest, the storm showed no mercy. The search party's progress was slow, their flashlights barely piercing the dense curtain of rain. Max moved ahead, his keen senses guiding him through the treacherous terrain. He paused occasionally, looking back to ensure the humans were following. His bark was their lifeline, a sound that cut through the chaos. But Max wasn't just navigating the forest, he was also fighting his own exhaustion. Days of limited food and exposure to the elements had taken their toll. His legs wobbled, his breaths came in gasps, but he pressed on. For Max, failure wasn't an option. Ethan needed him, and that singular thought drove him forward. As Ethan lay huddled beneath a makeshift shelter of leaves and branches, his thoughts drifted to the moments that had brought him here. It had all started with an argument, a small, insignificant fight with his mother that now felt like a lifetime ago. He had stormed off, seeking solace in the woods near their home, not realizing how quickly the forest would swallow him whole. At first, it had been an adventure. But as the hours turned into days, fear had taken hold. Max had found him on the second day, his sudden appearance like a beacon of hope in the growing darkness. Together, they had survived, the dog's instincts compensating for Ethan's lack of knowledge. But even Max couldn't conjure food or stave off the cold indefinitely. Max's relentless barking brought the search team to a halt. They strained to see through the downpour, their flashlights catching glimpses of movement. Finally, they saw it, a small, huddled figure beneath a pile of leaves and debris. "Ethan," someone shouted, their voice cracking with relief. The boy stirred, his pale face lifting slightly at the sound. Max rushed to Ethan's side, licking his face and nuzzling him as if to say, "I told you I'd come back." The searchers moved quickly, wrapping the boy in blankets and calling for medical assistance. Ethan's lips trembled as he whispered, "Max, he didn't leave me." As the team carried Ethan out of the forest, Max stayed close, his body pressed against the stretcher as though guarding his boy from any further harm. When they reached the command center, Grace was waiting, her face a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming joy. She ran to Ethan, cradling him in her arms as tears streamed down her face. "I thought I'd lost you," she sobbed. Ethan's weak smile reassured her. "Max saved me, Mom. He's my hero." The tension in the makeshift medical tent was palpable. As Ethan received treatment for dehydration and mild hypothermia, Max lay on a separate blanket nearby, his chest rising and falling unevenly. Grace knelt beside the dog, gently stroking his muddy fur. "You can't leave us, Max," she whispered, her voice cracking. The search team's veterinarian, a local volunteer, worked quickly, checking Max's vitals. "He's exhausted, severely dehydrated, and likely malnourished," she said. "But he's a fighter. Let's give him a chance." Ethan, now wrapped in warm blankets and sipping on water, turned his tired eyes toward Max. "Mom, he has to be okay," he said, his voice frail but firm. Grace squeezed Ethan's hand, nodding. "He will be. He's strong, just like you." As the storm finally began to subside, Grace reflected on the gravity of what had transpired. Without Max, Ethan might never have been found. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She recalled the day Ethan had insisted on keeping the stray dog. "He's my best friend," Ethan had declared with the conviction only a child could muster. Grace had relented, not realizing that decision would one day save her son's life. She turned to the veterinarian, her voice trembling. "Do whatever you can. I'll cover the cost, whatever it takes." As the hours passed, Max's condition remained critical. The once energetic dog now lay still, his eyes half closed. Ethan, unable to rest despite his exhaustion, insisted on sitting beside him. "You saved me, Max," he murmured, his small hand resting on the dog's paw. "Now you have to let us save you." The dog's tail gave the faintest wag, a small but hopeful sign. Grace watched the interaction, her heart aching with gratitude and fear. She knew Max was more than just a pet, he was family. Word of Ethan's rescue quickly spread, capturing the attention of local news outlets. Reporters descended on the search site, eager to tell the story of the heroic dog who had led rescuers to the missing boy. Cameras flashed, and microphones hovered as Grace shielded Ethan from the onslaught of questions. One reporter asked, "What do you think drove Max to find help?" Grace's answer was simple yet profound: love. Pure, unconditional love. The story resonated deeply with the public, sparking an outpouring of support for Max and Ethan. Offers of assistance, donations, and messages of encouragement flooded in, creating a wave of hope amidst the uncertainty. While the media buzzed with praise for Max, the reality of his condition remained grim. The veterinarian explained that Max needed fluids, rest, and possibly further medical intervention. However, the storm had cut off access to nearby veterinary facilities, and the supplies at the site were limited. Time was of the essence, and Max's resilience could only carry him so far. The rescuers and volunteers banded together, brainstorming ways to stabilize Max until they could transport him to a proper clinic. "We'll do whatever it takes," one rescuer said firmly. "This dog didn't give up on Ethan. We're not giving up on him." As Grace sat beside Max, memories of the past year came flooding back. She remembered how reluctant she had been to take in the stray, worried about adding another responsibility to her already chaotic life. But Ethan's determination had won her over. "He needs us, Mom," he had said, his eyes filled with empathy beyond his years. Over time, Max had become more than just a pet, he had become a source of comfort, a companion during Ethan's most challenging days. Now, watching Max fight for his life, Grace realized just how much the dog had given them, not just his loyalty, but his heart. Despite his frailty, Ethan refused to leave Max's side. "He didn't leave me when I needed him," the boy argued when a nurse tried to coax him into resting. Grace finally relented, allowing Ethan to sit beside Max under her watchful eye. "Talk to him," she encouraged. "Let him know you're here." Ethan leaned close to Max, his voice barely above a whisper. "Remember when we found you? You were so scared, but I told you it'd be okay. Now I need you to believe me again, Max." Please don't give up. Max's ears twitched a subtle acknowledgement that filled the tent with a fragile sense of hope. Just as it seemed help was on the horizon, a new obstacle arose. The storm had caused landslides, blocking the main roads leading to the nearest veterinary clinic. The rescuers debated alternative routes, but each option presented significant risks. Time was slipping away, and Max's condition was worsening. One rescuer, a seasoned wilderness guide named Tom, stepped forward. There's a logging road a few miles from here. It's rough, but it might be passable with an off-road vehicle. I'll take Max myself if I have to. Grace hesitated, torn between fear and desperation. Are you sure it's safe? Tom's expression was resolute. This dog saved your boy. Now it's our turn to save him. As preparations were made to transport Max, Ethan clung to his mother, his voice trembling. What if he doesn't make it? Grace knelt down, looking her son in the eyes. Max is a fighter, just like you. And as long as we keep fighting for him, he has a chance. The off-road vehicle roared to life, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Max was carefully loaded onto a makeshift stretcher, with Tom and the veterinarian by his side. As the vehicle disappeared into the night, Grace and Ethan stood together, their hearts heavy with hope and fear. The off-road vehicle jolted and swayed as it navigated the treacherous logging road, its tires slipping on patches of mud and debris. Inside, Tom kept his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes scanning the path ahead with unwavering focus. Beside him, the veterinarian monitored Max, who lay on a stretcher in the back seat. The dog's breathing was shallow, his strength waning, but his will to fight was palpable. "Stay with us, buddy," Tom muttered, his voice barely audible over the growl of the engine and the rain pounding against the windshield. Each mile they covered felt like a small victory, but the road ahead remained daunting. Back at the command center, Grace and Ethan sat together, their hands tightly clasped. The tent was quiet now, the chaos of the search replaced by an uneasy stillness. The rescuers, having done all they could, offered soft words of encouragement. "If anyone can pull through this, it's Max," one said, their voice filled with conviction. Ethan leaned his head against his mother's shoulder. "Mom, do you think Max knows how much I love him?" Grace stroked his hair, her heart aching. "He knows, sweetheart. He's always known." In the vehicle, the veterinarian worked diligently, administering fluids and monitoring Max's vitals. The dog stirred occasionally, his eyes fluttering open for brief moments. Each time, he seemed to search for something, or someone. "He's still fighting," the vet said, her tone both hopeful and cautious. "But we need to get him there soon." Tom nodded, his jaw set with determination. "We're not stopping. Not until he's safe." After what felt like an eternity, the vehicle emerged from the forest and onto a gravel road leading to a small veterinary clinic. The staff, alerted to the emergency, rushed out to meet them. Max was carefully transferred onto a gurney and wheeled inside, the team moving with practiced urgency. Grace and Ethan, notified of the successful arrival, were overwhelmed with relief. For the first time in days, Grace allowed herself to exhale. "They'll take care of him now," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Ethan nodded, his eyes filled with quiet determination. "He's going to be okay." Hours passed as the clinic staff worked tirelessly to stabilize Max. Grace and Ethan arrived shortly after, their presence filling the waiting room with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The veterinarian, still clad in her rain-soaked jacket, emerged to provide an update. "He's stable for now," she began, her tone cautious. "Max is severely dehydrated and malnourished, and he's suffering from extreme exhaustion. But his vitals are improving. He's a fighter, no doubt about it." Ethan's face lit up, though he remained cautious. "Can I see him?" The vet hesitated before nodding. "Only for a moment. He needs rest." Ethan and Grace were led into a quiet recovery room where Max lay on a padded bed, hooked up to and for. The sight of the dog, so strong and vibrant just days ago, reduced to such a fragile state brought tears to Grace's eyes. Ethan approached slowly, kneeling beside Max and resting his hand gently on the dog's paw. "Hey, Max," he whispered, his voice quivering. "You did it. You saved me. Now you just have to rest, okay? You're my hero." Max's eyes opened briefly, meeting Ethan's gaze. His tail gave the faintest wag, a gesture so small yet so powerful that it brought a smile to the boy's face. Grace placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, her voice soft but firm. "He knows you're here, Ethan. That's what matters." As Max rested, Grace and Ethan sat together in the waiting room, reflecting on the events of the past week. Grace spoke quietly, her words tinged with awe. "Do you know what Max taught me, Ethan? That love doesn't just sit still, it moves. It pushes through fear, pain and exhaustion. That dog didn't just save you, he showed us what love can do." Ethan nodded, his young mind grasping the depth of her words in his own way. "He's more than just a dog, isn't he? He's family." Outside the clinic, the story of Max's heroism continued to spread. Animal lovers, inspired by the tale of the loyal dog who braved the elements to save his boy, organized fundraisers and sent supplies to the clinic. Messages of encouragement poured in from across the country. One anonymous donor even covered the cost of Max's medical expenses, leaving a simple note: "Heroes deserve our help." The outpouring of support became a lifeline for Grace, who had felt so alone in her struggles before. Now, she saw the beauty of community, the way people could come together to celebrate something as pure as the bond between a boy and his dog. As the sun rose on a new day, Max began showing signs of improvement. He lifted his head, his eyes brighter, and even managed a small bark when Ethan entered the room. The clinic staff celebrated the milestone, their efforts rewarded by the dog's resilience. Ethan, still frail but recovering well, sat beside Max every chance he got, sharing stories of their adventures in the woods. "You're the bravest dog in the world, Max," he declared, his voice full of conviction. "And when we get home, I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." As Max's condition improved, another question loomed: how had Ethan and Max ended up so deep in the forest in the first place? Ethan had been reluctant to talk about it, but now, as he began to heal, he whispered something to Grace that sent a chill down her spine. "Mom," he said, his voice barely audible, "there was something out there with us. It didn't want us to leave." What Ethan meant would change everything they thought they knew about their harrowing ordeal. Ethan's quiet words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Grace's breath caught as she gently pressed for more. "What do you mean, sweetheart? What was out there?" The boy hesitated, his gaze flickering toward Max, who lay beside him, his eyes watchful as though sensing the tension. "I don't know what it was," Ethan began, his voice trembling. "But it was big. It made noises, like growls, but not like any animal I've ever heard." Max growled back at it, and it stayed away for a while. But it kept coming closer. Grace's stomach churned. Her mind raced with possibilities, perhaps a bear, a coyote, or even her son's imagination heightened by fear and exhaustion. But the fear in Ethan's eyes was undeniable, and it was mirrored in Max's alert posture, even in his weakened state. Determined to understand what her son had experienced, Grace spoke with the search team. "Have there been any reports of large predators in the area?" she asked, her voice tinged with urgency. The team leader, a seasoned ranger named Linda, furrowed her brow. "There have been scattered sightings of black bears, but nothing out of the ordinary. The storm likely stirred up some of the wildlife, but it's unusual for them to stalk a human, especially one accompanied by a dog." Ethan's account, however, grew more detailed as he opened up. He described how Max had barked furiously into the darkness, how the unseen presence had seemed to circle them. "It was like it was watching us, waiting for something," he said, his small hands trembling as he recounted the terrifying nights. Grace shivered, gripping her son's hand. "You're safe now," she reassured him. Whatever it was, Max kept it away. Haunted by her son's story, Grace decided to return to the forest with Linda and a small team. They retraced Ethan and Max's trail, guided by the markers left during the search. As they ventured deeper, the forest seemed almost alive, the dense canopy casting eerie shadows despite the morning sun. The group found remnants of Ethan's journey, a makeshift shelter, a torn piece of his shirt, but nothing that suggested a large predator. Then, they discovered something chilling, claw marks etched deep into a tree near one of Ethan's shelters. The marks were too large for a coyote, and the spacing didn't match a bear. Linda examined them closely, her expression darkening. "Whatever made these was big," she said gravely. "And it was close." Back at the clinic, Max's recovery continued, but he remained hyper-alert whenever Ethan was nearby. The dog's ears would perk up at the slightest noise, his body tensing as though bracing for danger. Even in his weakened state, Max seemed determined to protect the boy who had become his entire world. One night, as Grace sat beside Max, she noticed his sudden shift in demeanor. His eyes locked onto the window, his ears twitching. Grace followed his gaze, her heart pounding. Outside, the forest loomed, dark and silent, but it felt as though something was watching. Shaking off the unease, she stroked Max's fur. "You've done enough, Max," she whispered. "We're safe now." But was that truly the case? Determined to bring closure to the ordeal, Linda organized one final sweep of the forest, this time with a larger team and better equipment. Grace, hesitant at first, ultimately decided to join them, feeling a deep need to confront whatever had haunted her son. Max, still recovering but growing stronger each day, watched her leave with a whine of protest. As the team delved deeper into the woods, the atmosphere grew heavy with tension. The trees seemed taller, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. Then, they heard it, a low, guttural growl that froze them in their tracks. Linda motioned for silence, her hand resting on the tranquilizer gun at her side. The growl came again, closer this time, vibrating through the air like a primal warning. The team moved cautiously, their flashlights slicing through the shadows. Suddenly, a figure burst from the underbrush, a large black bear, its eyes wild with fear. But instead of charging, it bolted past them, disappearing into the forest. "What would scare a bear like that?" one of the team members whispered, their voice trembling. They didn't have to wait long for an answer. From the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything they had imagined. Its massive frame moved with an almost supernatural grace, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. It was an apex predator, but not one they recognized. For a moment, it stared at them, assessing, before letting out a bone-chilling roar. Panic erupted as the team scrambled to retreat. Linda fired a warning shot into the air, the sound echoing through the forest, but it only seemed to agitate the creature. It lunged forward, its speed and power defying its size. Grace, adrenaline surging, ran with the others, her mind focused solely on getting back to Ethan and Max. The group managed to evade the creature, finally reaching the edge of the forest where their vehicles waited. As they caught their breath, Linda turned to Grace, her expression grim. "We need to alert the authorities. Whatever that thing is, it's not natural." Shaken but determined, Grace returned to the clinic, where Ethan and Max waited. The sight of them, her son alive, her dog recovering, grounded her in the midst of her fear. She hugged Ethan tightly, whispering, "We're never going back there. You're safe now." Ethan nodded but glanced at Max, whose eyes remained fixed on the door, his instincts seemingly attuned to an unseen threat. Grace knew that while the immediate danger had passed, the mystery of what they had encountered in the woods would linger. As the clinic settled into an uneasy quiet that night, Max stirred from his bed, his ears perked and his body tense. A low growl escaped his throat as he stared out the window. Ethan, asleep nearby, shifted in his dreams, muttering Max's name. Outside, the forest loomed dark and impenetrable. Somewhere within its depths, a pair of glowing eyes watched, waiting. In the stillness of the night, Max's low growls intensified, rousing Grace from a restless sleep. She quickly noticed the dog's tense posture and focused gaze on the window. "What is it, Max?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan, stirred by the commotion, sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes. "Mom," he murmured. Grace motioned for him to stay quiet. The soft sounds of rustling outside grew louder, distinct against the quiet of the night. Grace's pulse quickened as Max barked, his voice sharp and insistent. Ethan clung to his mother, fear returning to his eyes. "Is it back?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Grace pulled him close, her gaze darting to the window. "I don't know, but we're not taking any chances." Linda, still staying nearby, was alerted by Grace's frantic call. Within minutes, she arrived at the clinic with 2 other rangers, equipped with tranquilizer guns and flashlights. "Whatever's out there, it's not going to get in here," Linda assured Grace, though her own unease was palpable. The group moved cautiously, scanning the perimeter of the clinic. Max, despite his injuries, insisted on following, his growls persistent. "He's trying to warn us," Linda remarked, observing the dog's behavior. We should trust his instincts. As they patrolled the area, a sudden snap of a branch drew their attention. The flashlight swung toward the sound, illuminating the massive creature that stepped into view. Its glowing eyes locked onto the group, its powerful frame exuding an almost otherworldly presence. Max barked furiously, straining against Grace's grip as if to confront the beast himself. "Stay back," Linda warned, raising her tranquilizer gun. But the creature didn't charge. Instead, it circled them slowly, its growls deep and menacing. It seemed to be assessing the threat, its movements deliberate and intelligent. Linda fired a tranquilizer dart, hitting the creature in the shoulder. It roared, the sound reverberating through the air, but it didn't go down. "We need more firepower," one of the rangers muttered, his hands shaking as he prepared another dart. As the creature took a step closer, Max broke free from Grace's grasp, charging toward the beast with a determination that defied his weakened state. "Max, no!" Ethan screamed, tears streaming down his face. Grace lunged to stop him, but it was too late. Max barked and snapped at the creature, darting around its legs to confuse and distract it. The beast swiped at him with claws that glinted in the moonlight, narrowly missing. Max's actions gave Linda and the rangers the opportunity they needed. They fired 2 more tranquilizer darts, finally bringing the creature to its knees. The beast let out a final guttural growl before collapsing to the ground. Max, panting heavily, limped back to Grace and Ethan, his body trembling from exertion. Ethan ran to him, throwing his arms around the dog. "You did it, Max," he sobbed. "You saved us again." With the creature subdued, the rangers moved quickly to secure it. Linda inspected its features closely, her brow furrowed in confusion. "This thing, it's not like anything I've ever seen. It doesn't belong here." The creature's size, strength, and unusual behavior hinted at something far beyond natural wildlife. The rangers contacted wildlife authorities, who dispatched a specialized team to transport the creature to a secure facility for study. Linda turned to Grace, her voice somber. "Whatever this thing is, it's not going to trouble you or anyone else again." As the adrenaline faded, Max collapsed into Ethan's arms, his body giving in to exhaustion and pain. "Max!" Ethan cried, panic setting in. The veterinarian rushed over, quickly assessing the dog's condition. "He's pushed himself too far. We need to get him back inside now." The group carried Max into the clinic, where the vet administered emergency care. Ethan refused to leave his side, holding Max's paw and whispering words of encouragement. "You're the bravest dog in the world, Max. Please don't leave me." Hours passed in tense silence as the vet worked tirelessly. Finally, she emerged from the treatment room with a tired but hopeful expression. "He's stable," she announced. "It'll take time, but he's going to make it." Relief washed over Grace and Ethan as they rushed to Max's side. The dog lay quietly, his eyes half open, but when he saw Ethan, his tail wagged weakly. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. "You're my hero, Max," Ethan whispered, leaning close. "You always will be." As the family stayed by Max's side, Grace reflected on the events of the past week. The creature's presence, Ethan's survival, and Max's unwavering loyalty had revealed something profound, the power of love and courage in the face of the unknown. Linda, too, shared her thoughts. "There's so much about this world we don't understand," she said. "But one thing's clear, whatever that thing was, Max stood his ground to protect you. That kind of bravery is rare." Later that night, as the family prepared to leave the clinic with Max, Ethan turned to Grace, his expression serious. "Mom, I don't think it was just an animal," he said. "It felt like it was watching us. Like it knew us." Grace's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Ethan hesitated, then glanced at Max, who stared out the car window toward the forest. "I think it'll come back," he said softly. "And I think Max knows it too." The family drove away, but the lingering sense of unease remained. Somewhere deep in the forest, the mysteries of the creature, and its connection to Ethan and Max, waited to be uncovered. The days following the confrontation were marked by quiet gratitude and reflection. Max remained under observation at the clinic, his injuries healing slowly but steadily. Ethan rarely left his side, spending hours telling Max stories, drawing pictures, or simply resting his head on the dog's chest. "Every time I think about what he did," Grace said one evening, sitting beside Ethan, I'm amazed all over again. He's not just brave, he's extraordinary. Max's strength gradually returned, and soon he was able to stand and wag his tail again. The sight of him walking through the clinic's yard for the first time brought tears of joy to Grace's eyes. He's a fighter, the veterinarian said with a smile. Just like the family he loves. Meanwhile, the creature was transported to a remote research facility where experts studied its physiology and behavior. Early reports confirmed Linda's suspicions. The creature was unlike anything in the natural world. Its unique attributes, glowing eyes, immense strength, and territorial intelligence, suggested an anomaly, possibly the result of human interference or a rare mutation. The researchers released a brief statement to the public, reassuring the community that the creature was contained and posed no further threat. However, speculation about its origin ran wild, sparking debates, news segments, and online theories. For Grace and Ethan, the creature's removal brought relief, but also lingering questions about what had drawn it to their path. The story of Ethan and Max's survival, and Max's heroics, spread far and wide, capturing hearts across the nation. News outlets highlighted the tale as a testament to loyalty, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Local organizations and animal shelters organized events in Max's honor. A special fundraiser titled Max's Mission aimed to support stray animals in need, inspired by Max's journey from abandoned stray to celebrated hero. Grace, Ethan, and Max were invited as guests of honor to the launch event, where Max was presented with a medal for bravery. Ethan spoke at the event, his young voice filled with pride. Max isn't just my best friend. He's my hero. And I hope every animal out there gets a chance to be someone's hero too. Back at home, life began to return to normal. The quiet routines of daily life felt sweeter now, infused with a deep appreciation for their safety and togetherness. Grace often found herself watching Max and Ethan play in the yard, their laughter a reminder of the bond that had carried them through the darkest moments. One evening, as the family sat together on the porch, Ethan turned to his mother. "Do you think Max knew he'd save me when we first found him?" he asked. Grace smiled, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I think Max has always known. And I think you saved each other." The ordeal left the family with a profound understanding of love and resilience. Max's actions had taught them, and the world, that bravery comes in many forms, and that love can inspire even the smallest among us to face the greatest challenges. For Grace, the experience strengthened her belief in the importance of community and compassion. She continued to work with local shelters, using her family's story to encourage others to adopt and care for animals in need. For Ethan, Max's bravery became a lifelong inspiration. "If Max didn't give up on me," he often said, "then I'll never give up on him, or anyone." The success of Max's mission extended beyond their town. Donations poured in from around the world, funding new shelter facilities, medical care, and adoption programs. Each time Grace shared Max's story, she emphasized its message: every animal deserves a chance to be loved, and to love in return. Max became a symbol of hope and loyalty, his journey inspiring countless families to open their homes to animals in need. Letters and photos from adopters flooded Grace's mailbox, each one sharing a story of how Max's tale had touched their hearts. Despite the joy and healing, Grace occasionally felt a twinge of unease when she thought of the forest and the creature that had stalked her son. The unanswered questions lingered like shadows at the edges of her thoughts. Ethan, too, sometimes stared out the window at night, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think it's really gone?" Ethan asked one evening, his voice quiet. Grace hesitated before answering. "I hope so," she said, pulling him close. "But no matter what, we have Max. And together, we can face anything." As the family prepared for bed that night, Max lay curled at Ethan's feet, his ears twitching in his sleep. Outside, the forest loomed, dark and mysterious. And far beyond the reach of the town's lights, a faint sound echoed, a growl, low and distant, carried on the wind. Ethan stirred in his sleep, his hand resting on Max's fur. "Good boy," he murmured, as though sensing the loyal presence that stood between him and the unknown. The screen fades to black, the words appearing in bold. "Some heroes wear capes. Others wear fur. Always listen to the ones who protect you." The sun rose over the small town, casting a warm glow on the backyard where Ethan and Max played together. Max, now fully recovered, barked joyfully as Ethan threw a ball, his laughter echoing across the yard. Grace watched from the kitchen window, her heart swelling with gratitude. Life had settled back into a comforting rhythm, but the lessons of the past weeks lingered in their minds, shaping their future. Ethan and Max's story was no longer just theirs, it had become a tale of inspiration for countless others. As the family embraced their new normal, Grace often reflected on what had unfolded. Max had proven that love wasn't passive, it was a force of action and resilience. He had risked everything for Ethan, reminding the world of the extraordinary courage and loyalty animals can show. Ethan, too, had grown. His ordeal in the forest had taught him the value of bravery, trust, and the unspoken bond he shared with Max. He's not just a dog, Ethan would often say. He's family. My best friend. The story carried a universal message of love, loyalty, and the importance of standing by those who depend on us. It highlighted the heroism that can emerge from the unlikeliest places and reminded everyone of the power of second chances, both for humans and animals. For those who heard the story, Max's actions weren't just heroic, they were a call to action. He had once been a stray, overlooked and abandoned, but love and care had transformed him into a hero. How many more Maxes were out there, waiting for someone to believe in them? The success of Max's mission continued to grow, fueled by the support of people inspired by the family's story. Grace became a passionate advocate for animal adoption and care, working with shelters to ensure that strays like Max were given the chance to thrive. In a heartfelt public message, Grace spoke directly to the audience. Max taught us that love isn't just something you feel, it's something you do. Every stray animal out there has the potential to be someone's hero, just like Max was for us. All they need is a chance. She encouraged viewers to take action in their own communities. Adopt a pet from a local shelter. Volunteer time at rescue organizations. Donate to programs like Max's Mission to support medical care and shelter facilities. Max changed our lives, she said. And I believe your next hero might be waiting for you. Share your story. Has an animal ever made a difference in your life? Tell us in the comments below, we'd love to hear your stories. Spread the word. If Max's journey inspired you, share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. Support the cause. Visit our website to learn more about Max's mission and how you can help animals in need. Final moments. The screen fades to a montage of Max and Ethan, running through the yard, cuddling on the couch, and sitting together as the sun sets. Interspersed are shots of other rescue animals finding loving homes, their wagging tails and bright eyes a testament to the impact of compassion. Some heroes are born. Others are rescued. Be the reason a hero finds their story. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more tales of courage and compassion. Together, we can make a difference, one life at a time.